Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if this is your first time here, hi, my name is Dana. I upload a new video every single Sunday, and whenever I can, I like to add an extra or two in there per week. So now is a great time to subscribe to my channel to stay on top of all of my new videos. If you're new to the tea journey, hi, welcome. This is a great place to start. In 2019, I wrote my first ebook called The Basics of Tea, and it's just meant to be a nice guide to the basics of tea. So it's just like a good base of knowledge to help you sort of start your tea journey if you don't know much about tea, just so you can like go into tea stores and explore tea with confidence and feel good while you're doing it. So I always have that linked down below. But this series, my Basics of Tea series, is meant to kind of supplement the book and to go along with it. So if you don't have the book, that's okay. But I'm following the same kind of format where each video is kind of walking through the different tea types and talking about the way they're processed, what they taste like, how to steep a good cup. And today we're doing Oolong, which is super diverse and awesome. And I feel like people are a lot less familiar with Oolong than they are with the other tea types, so I'm really excited to get to talk about it today. Oolong teas kind of fall between green and black teas when it comes to like the processing, the oxidization, and even kind of the taste. For me, it's like I love green teas and I'll drink black teas, but never really like a straight black tea. Like I don't like that like super dark flavor as much. Like I prefer teas on the lighter side. And oolongs are like the perfect middle between like green and black. They're generally more oxidized than a green tea and less oxidized than a black tea. But there are so many different varieties of oolong and so many cool teas to try. Oolong teas go through the most steps from when they're plucked from the plant till they end up in your cup. So more steps than any other tea type. So that's kind of what allows for such variation between flavors and teas, because there's so many different steps and different tea farms prefer to do it differently, and there's just a lot of room for them to change things up. Some oolongs have like a crisp, nutty flavor, and others are creamy and smooth. Some even have notes of different like fruits or floral notes. So there's definitely a lot to try. Oolong can get a little bit expensive, but it's so worth it because they just taste so amazing just straight on their own. But another cool fact about oolong is you can re-steep your oolong leaves multiple times and you'll get a little bit of a different taste each time because the little leaves open up a little more each time you steep them, giving you a lot of different cups of tea all from the same leaves. So when you look at it that way, it's a lot more cost effective than it looks when you initially buy it. So the same as all the other tea types we've talked about, oolong leaves start as the Camellia sinensis plant. Camellia sinensis is the tea plant. If you're drinking real tea, it's gonna be from the Camellia sinensis. So there are a lot of other things we drink as tea that technically aren't tea because they're not Camellia sinensis, like when you drink herbal teas with like chamomile or rooibos. Those are technically not tea, but in our hearts, they are because we steep them and consume them the same way. But oolong is from the Camellia sinensis plant, just like all the other tea types. And the tea leaves are plucked once they've reached peak maturity. And then they're laid out to dry out completely. The next step is where it gets interesting. They deliberately bruise the edges of the oolong leaves. So they put the leaves, after they're dried, they put them in a large basket and shake the basket so the edges of the leaves get bruised and it draws out the juices of the tea leaf. And those juices sort of replenish what was dried out in the step before that. So this is a really key step in creating the final flavor of the oolong tea. So sometimes it's bruised more heavily, sometimes more light. It all depends on the tea maker's desired results. So then once the tea leaves are bruised, they are going to get oxidized. So during this step, they're laid out to rest, but sometimes the tea maker will rest them and then bruise them again, and then rest them and then bruise them again. So depending on what exactly they're looking for, like the flavor they're looking to draw out, like their desired effects, they'll repeat these steps back and forth. So it'll be bruising, laying out to oxidize, bruising, laying out to oxidize. So once the juices are exposed from the bruising, and then they're left to oxidize. They're being dried out and introduced to oxygen, and that's what can bring out the different tasting notes in the final tea. So depending how long they've been bruised, how many times they've been bruised, how long they've been laid out to oxidize. See, there are so many little factors that, like, you could do it more, you could do it less, you could do just a little, you could do a lot. All the little factors are what make all of the different types of oolong so unique. So once those steps are done and the tea leaves are at the level of oxidization that the tea maker was looking for, that's when they heat it up to stop the oxidization. Oolong leaves are briefly heated at a really high temperature to stop them from continuing to oxidize. But the reason they do it quickly is because they do want the tea leaves to retain a little bit of that moisture even though they are done oxidizing. So they want to stop the oxidization but keep a little bit of moisture in the leaves. And the reason they want to keep the moisture is so that they stay flexible for the next step. The next step is one of my favorites. I'll pull out some of the leaves so I can show you, because this is where like this step becomes like really apparent. So if you want to take a look, I just have David's Tea's Tea Kuan Yin. It's an oolong from Taiwan. It's hand produced on a small family garden near the mountains of Taiwan. This beautiful flowery tea has a long history, and it's just the one ingredient, just a straight oolong, one of my favorite teas of all time. And if you take a look at it, you'll see it's not quite as dark in color as the black tea and not quite as light in color as the green tea. And that's because it's like right in between. It's been oxidized like more than a green tea, less than a black tea generally. But this next step where they shape the leaves is really visually apparent in the way that the leaves look, because they are rolled into little balls. So this is what they do during this step. They shape it. And as you can see, they're little balls. So they roll the tea leaves into little balls, and when we steep them, you'll see them open up, and it's really, really magical and exciting. So all of my favorite oolongs are all in little balls like this because I love it, but sometimes they do like long twists instead. The shape really depends, again, on what the tea maker is looking for and what they're looking to accomplish flavor-wise, because the shapes really do make a lot of difference in the flavor. And that's why I said, like, when you re-steep your oolong, each time the little balls of tea will open up more and more and give you sort of a different flavor every time. So that's sort of why that works so well, because of the shape. And the final step is they roast the tea leaves. They roast them at a low temperature for an extended period of time. Remove all of the moisture. This makes it so oolong teas have a longer shelf life than any other kind of tea. So next, let's get our tea steeping. I'm just gonna take, because I did one perfect scoop, and I'm using the David's Tea steeper today instead of a regular infuser, because I really like to give the leaves a lot of room to expand when it comes to oolong, because they will open up. So like visually we'll be able to see everything, and the more room they have to expand, the better the tea is gonna taste. So for oolong, they're not as sensitive as green and white teas. So you can use water that is, you know, right off a boil. I still wouldn't use boiling water for an oolong, but I'd say like 175, 180 degrees is about good. And we can let it steep for about 5 minutes, so not as short as the other tea types that we have been exploring. So I'll just close this guy up. Set it to the side, and we'll keep an eye on it as those leaves start to open. So as far as the way oolong teas taste, it's really hard to give it like a blanket statement, I guess, because they're all kind of different. Like with green teas, I can say like they're grassy and oceanic, and with white teas, I can say like they're this and that, you know? But with an oolong tea, there's just so much variety. There are some that are lightly oxidized, so they do have a similar thing to the green teas, like they have that similar vegetal sort of thing, but with a little kind of nutty note, so a little different. Some oolongs have sweet fruit and floral notes. They kind of like mimic the flavor of fruits or flowers, which I think my favorite kind are like the nutty flavors when they have like nutty, creamy sort of notes to it. I think that would have to be my favorite. Like the tea Kuan Yin, it does have like a bit of a floral note, but it kind of has like this deep sort of nuttiness that I love. And then like more heavily oxidized oolong teas have like a woody, roasty kind of flavor, like almost like wood kind of notes. And generally speaking, oolongs contain like a medium level of caffeine. But before I worked at David's Tea, I don't think I had ever tried an oolong. And I didn't really know what to expect. If you've ever been in a David's Tea, there's like all the different tea types on the wall, and it goes sort of in the same order I'm going in because that's what makes sense to me. White, green, oolong, black. They also have a category for pour, rooibos, and herbal. So when I saw oolong, I was like, you know, I've heard that word. I've heard of oolong, but I don't really know what it is. So my boss at the time explained it's kind of between green and black. So when I tried it, I was just like amazed at how delicious it is, because I feel like even if you're not like a tea person, you hear a lot about green tea and you sort of think of black tea as like regular tea because that's what you see if you go to like a restaurant and order iced tea. A lot of the time it's just an iced black tea. So I feel like oolong is like the missing link that like a lot of people haven't tried, but I wish everyone would because it is so delicious. So exploring the oolongs was so exciting when I first got into my tea journey. And honestly, there's still a lot I would like to try, but I remember like my first oolong and I was just like, I was honestly like amazed. I was like, why have I never tried this my whole life? So my favorite way to drink an oolong tea is straight with nothing added, not a blend, no sugar, nothing, like just on its own as a hot cup of tea to really enjoy all those complex flavors. Because we talked about all those steps that the tea makers go through to get exactly what they want out of the tea leaf. So I feel like it's like an experience everyone should have, to really sit with a cup of oolong tea and just like notice the complexities and the flavors and just enjoy it for what it is. So I recommend that to anybody. Let's check out, look how that looks. Look how they've opened already. They still are gonna open a little more though. Isn't that cool? I'm like the biggest nerd in the world for an oolong tea. Oh. But I think a nice, like if you are looking to enjoy oolong blends, like the sky is the limit. There's so much out there as far as blends, but I think it's really nice with stone fruits like apricot, peach, and plum, because a lot of the time like the oolong has those little like notes in the tea leaf that mimics those kinds of fruits. So to add those in, I feel like is really good. Also nuts. David's Tea had, it's kind of like a traditional thing to do like peach oolongs and things, but David's Tea, I don't know if they still have it, but they used to have one called Long Life Oolong, and it was peach, apricot, and almond, and it was just so good. So I really like to play into the flavors that are already like present in the tea leaf, like nuts and fruit, and floral notes are really awesome. I definitely have a couple I could show you with things like that are in my collection. But like jasmine or magnolia are really nice pairings with oolong. But a really fun way to enjoy oolong that's really popular in Taiwan is as bubble tea or boba tea. Here in America, we drink absolutely every variety of tea, sometimes not even tea, and we call it boba tea, like smoothies and like all different like slushies and things with tapioca balls, and we still call it boba tea. But traditionally in Taiwan, boba tea was iced oolong with milk and boba pearls. But let's check on our little leaves again. Look at how beautiful. They're opening up nice. And I do want to give this a couple more minutes. So in the meantime, let's check out the oolong teas I have in my personal tea collection. And I think I'll start with the newest one I have. So we were talking about those floral notes, and this is the perfect example of that. This is David's Tea's Rose Oolong. So as usual, most of these are from David's Tea because they're just kind of my go-to tea company still. but this is just oolong leaves and rose petals. So it's really nice. It's so like subtly floral. And these oolong leaves are really nice and creamy tasting. So it was so good, because sometimes I feel like David's tea does go a little overboard with flavors where it's like so strong that sometimes you aren't really appreciating the tea leaf. But this tea was really nice because it did do that thing where it was sort of just picking up on the notes already in the oolong and enhancing them a little bit. So those floral notes to add like a hint of rose was just the perfect like little tiny like enhancement. And in that same note there, I have a magnolia scented oolong. It just looks like a regular oolong tea, but as you could see, there's like a little more green to it. Like it's a little bit more green in color than the other oolongs. So that would mean that it's a little less oxidized, which makes sense, because with a flavor like magnolia, like that delicate flower note, it pairs really nice. And it's just scented with the magnolia, so it doesn't have like actual pieces in it. It's just like laid out and scented. This is another one of my favorite teas of all time. It is David's Tea's Guangzhou Milk Oolong. And it's super like milky tasting and creamy tasting and delicious. I have a lot of this. I always use my free tea redemptions on this. I always use it on oolongs because we can't use it on matchas, so oolong is like the next most expensive thing that I love, basically. This one is really good. The description says, this ultra rare oolong from the Wuyi Mountains of China is velvety smooth and lightly creamy with a subtle hint of orchid. So this one has that like really milky, creamy sort of thing with like a subtle floral note. When you compare it to the Tea Kuan Yin, this one's more like nutty. This one's more nutty than the milk oolong. Like it has a sharper, more nutty sort of flavor to it, whereas the milk oolong is just creamy and smooth and like milky and amazing. So both of those, they're so different, but they're both oolongs and they're both some of my very favorites. Now getting into blends, I do have one from Tea by Daniel. And this one is really good. It's an oolong and it has nougat bits, almonds, honey, vanilla, and natural flavor. And it's just called Wow. And this one was really good. Like it's a blend that's not super over the top. Like again, it just has some nice little enhancements to it, but you can see like those little nougat pieces. This is a really fun one. It's like the perfect level of flavor. Like it's a flavored tea, but without taking away anything like from the actual tea leaves, because I know the owners of Tea by Daniel really love their oolong teas as well. So I feel like they have some really good blends where you're appreciating the tea leaf first and foremost, but then there's just a couple little special additions. Now these two are definitely the most like over the top leaf flavored ones that I have. This one is called Citron Oolong from David's Tea, and it's in this like sheep tin. But it's really pretty. I don't remember exactly all of what it has in it, but I know it does have like jasmine petals, oolong, and I think there's like lemon or orange oil in it because it's a lot stronger in like citron than if it just had like lemon peel. And I know it doesn't have lemon peel, so I don't really quite remember. I know this one was being discontinued while I worked there, so I bought myself a whole tin of it because it was pretty inexpensive at the time. So I can't remember what's in it because I don't have the ingredients in front of me. But it's very, very citrusy. So this honestly isn't one of my favorites. I do love a citrusy tea, but I like even more to taste the oolong. And then last but not least, I really loved this one when it first came out, but I just don't find myself reaching for it a whole lot. This is another one from David's Tea, and it's maple syrup oolong. So as you can see, there's a lot of big chunks of stuff. And again, I don't quite remember everything that's in it, but it kind of has like a caramel corn vibe. I see that there are pineapple pieces and apple pieces, so it's just a lot of extra stuff with the oolong. But like this particular oolong has like a buttery flavor, so it does play into the maple nicely, but I would choose like a straight oolong over an overtly flavored one. Our tea leaves are fully opened and beautiful. Look at that. Look how big they got. Remember when they were just little baby like oolong balls? I love it. So let's go ahead and steep this now. I'm just gonna set my steeper right on top of my cup. Let it drain right in. And then we can look at the tea leaves too. This probably wasn't the cup to use because I have only up to here, but that's okay. It smells so good. I definitely smell that like fruity undertone, like that plum sort of hint. Oh my God. All right, and I do wanna check out how the tea leaves look now that they're open. So look at that. Look how big they got. Personally, I love when I find sticks in my tea because I feel like it's just kind of a cool reminder that these teas are sourced from nature. They literally came from leaves, like they came from the ground. Like, I don't know, I just think that's really cool. Let me find a nice big leaf. I want to get it as unrolled as possible. Look at that leaf. I don't know if it's gonna come across on camera, but we're gonna look really closely because if you look around the edge of the leaves, you can sort of see the parts where they were bruised. Like there's like kind of like reddish, purplish sort of spots around the edges. But that shows you that the tea leaves were bruised. So you could see around the edge, the color is different because that was where they drew out the tea juices, and those parts are a little more oxidized than the center parts, which didn't get the extent of the bruising in the big old basket. But anyway, let's go ahead and try it. It's still really hot, but I'm gonna go for it. There's just nothing more wonderful. This one has like a nutty, fruity, and floral note. Like it's like that sharp nuttiness. And then there's that plum, like fruity sort of note. And then the cherry on top is that floral thing, like that sweet little floral note. I absolutely love oolong teas. So as always, I'm glad I got to like sit down and talk about it because I love it. Like this has been so, this little series I'm doing has been so fun to film so far because it's kind of like reintroducing me to straight teas myself. And it's been like an adventure of my own to like drink through all of them. But with oolongs, like this is something I do love on a normal basis, and it's so delicious and wonderful, and I just hope you guys try it too. So let me know in the comments if you have tried a straight oolong before and what it was, what kind of notes did you notice, and what did you think about it, just your general thoughts. Or tell me all about your favorite oolong blend. I know there's some really awesome blends out there, and I'd love to hear what your favorites are. I'm gonna go hang out and enjoy this. I might start some editing or something like that, but I just really wanna like be present and sip this tea slowly and really enjoy. I hope you guys are having a beautiful day, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.